Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Stories with Bree. I'm super excited. This week, I have a special guest. Her name is Hannah, better known as Get Over Your Shelf, which I love your name, by the way. I was like, oh, that's so funny.
Thank you.
Yes, come on, get over your shelf. And so, super excited to have you here. Love your hair color, love your vibe.
Thank you.
Please tell my guests who you are and what you want them to know about you, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, so as Bree said, my name is Hannah, and we met through the Bookstagram community, which I'm super grateful for. I love your content too. And yeah, I've always loved reading, but definitely I'm currently a senior in college. So and I study forestry. So definitely forestry is very different from like humanitarian or like, yeah, just like different literature and stuff. Like I don't have as many of like the general education classes. It is more like biochem and all that kind of stuff. So over the pandemic, I definitely fell back in love with reading because it was something that I lost just in the college process. So yeah, I figured making a Bookstagram would hold me accountable. And because I'm with students a lot of the time, my school is specifically science-based, so we're all like science majors, so there's not a bunch of readers there. So I figured I would make a Bookstagram, and it's been an amazing experience, and I've started taking up photography as well. So just to combine the two passions has been really awesome.
Oh my gosh, so we have a lot in common. Everything.
Oh, yay!
tweet. That's great. So you're studying forestry, which is awesome. And so I take it that you are still an undergrad and you're about to get ready to graduate.
Yes, so I graduate in May, and then I'll continue at in next September at University of Maine for my master's degree in forestry.
Awesome, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Congratulations on all of those things.
Thank you.
But let's get into it. I always start these interviews with icebreakers. So I'm going to start you off with the first icebreaker. If you can remember, what is your favorite childhood book?
Ooh, I definitely, my mom is a super avid reader. So I definitely grew up seeing her reading, and we'd always go to the library and pick out, she loves Stephen King and thrillers and horror. So I wanted to be like that. So my favorite books growing up were the Goosebumps series by R.L. Stine. Yes. So, and then I found out there was a TV show, and that was like the end of that. I was literally one of the first kids to be like, this is good, but have you read the book? Like, just, I don't know, stuff like that. So yeah, that was probably the first series I was super into, which definitely was when I was younger and in elementary school. Yeah, they were just super fun, and there was always an element of surprise, which I really loved. And of course, before that, it was a lot of like classic storybooks, like If You Give a Moose a Muffin, If You Give, I forgot what the other one is. If You Give something a cookie. But yeah, just like little books like that. I definitely like before that too. So.
Okay. I've never heard of those two, but I am very familiar with R.L. Stine and the Goosebumps. Mm-hmm. I remember when that was big on the scene when I was coming.
Yeah.
So I definitely remember that. That's so fun. It's like I always ask people these questions, and it's fun to hear the answers to see what comes up. And I'm like, oh, I know that, or no, I've never been familiar with that. So one of my goals at the end of this season, I do 10 episode season. So one of my goals at the end of the first season is to do a bibliophile of all of the books that everybody has mentioned. Now, don't hold me to that, audience.
That's no pressure.
That is a passion goal or whatever that I plan to do. But don't hold me to it if you don't get it. But it's my goal to do it at the end of each season is to offer that, because people might want to read those books and they want to add those resources to their own library. So, do you have a library card? And if so, how many?
Yeah, so I currently have one and like a half. So I have my one. I'm originally from New Jersey, so I have my home library card, which I use for a lot of, I'm a big fan of like Hoopla and Libby, so I use a lot of those apps to check out like ebooks and audiobooks. And then I do have like my school library card. So I have access to the school library, and just different books there. But again, they are more science focused, environmental focused. Right. So it's a different kind of vibe, but it's still a good one. So I do try to switch up between the two. And yeah, I would love to get one locally as well. Probably when I move next year, I'll get one for my local library there as well too.
Okay, so. Awesome. As a librarian, I'm always advocating for libraries, and like you pay your taxes, use the library. You never know when you need that resource. So I am an advocate for wherever you move, get your library card, and I have plenty. Because of that. So digital for you or pen and paper?
Ooh, so man, I do like the feeling of writing. So kind of like a mix of both, where I'll have like a notes app, but I'll write on my iPad or write something like that. But yeah, I do like just having my phone on me and digital notes that way. It's just so accessible instead of carrying stuff around, especially if I'm in the field for classes and stuff. I can't really like bring out a whole notebook and stuff. So definitely, yeah, I would say digital, but I do always have a respect for a good journal and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I just really got into like physically journaling the last couple of years. So I feel you. I'm a digital girl. My notes app is Liddy on my iPhone. Okay.
Love notes. Love
it. If you want to sponsor me, just know that is the reason why I got your phone, is because of the notes app. So if you want to put me in a commercial, whatever y'all want to do, I'm fine with it. I'm cool.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. So if y'all hear this, y'all stumble across this, just know that Bree said, I'm all for it. So who's your favorite author/writer?
Oh man, that one definitely is an interesting one, since there was such a big gap in when I was interested in reading, and then now when I'm getting back into it, I would definitely say before it was, probably Jodi Picoult. I used to really like. I started reading her in high school, and yeah, I haven't read any Colleen Hoover, which I know might be controversial, but definitely when people talk about Colleen Hoover, it reminds me a lot of Jodi Picoult. So it's just kind of like thrillers, some romance involved typically, but those were always like, if I didn't have anything to read, I knew Jodi Picoult was going to be good. So I'd pick her up. Now I'm really into Tiffany D. Jackson, just grown. And also, I know. She's so good. I'm in the middle of, I just started the audiobook for Blackout, which I know is more authors than just her, but it's just been, again, I can't imagine her writing anything like I wouldn't like. So, I mean, that's definitely biased, but if she could put out a napkin with writing and I would still eat it up. So.
That is so funny. I have Blackout. I haven't started it yet, but I do have it, and it has loads of artists in there that I enjoy. I believe Angie Stone is in there as well. And then, no, not Angie. I said Angie Stone. That is a singer. I'm sorry, Nick. Nick Stone in there, and then Tiffany, and then I believe there are a couple other people in there that I really enjoy their writing. So I have not opened it yet, but it's on my TBR. My evergreen TBR.
Girl, so long of a TBR.
I did purchase the book though recently, so I'm super excited about that. One of my aunties, a woman after my own heart, gave me a gift card to Barnes and Noble, and I was like, "Oh, I'm getting this book. I didn't even know this was out," so I definitely had to get it. But you said some things, and I want to kind of go back to those things. So we're getting into a lot of the Bookstagram questions and stuff. And you said part of the reason why you opened your Bookstagram was because you got back into reading and you got back into loving reading. And you said part of the reason why you stopped really reading was because you kind of went into more of the STEM side and went into college and didn't have really a lot of time for leisure reading. How did you now at your senior year incorporate that back into your life? Like, what kind of time management have you done to be able to incorporate reading back into your life as a form of, I assume, to be self-care for you?
Yes, for sure. Definitely. I think a lot of, sorry. I just think it's hard as a college student, I think, to read for pleasure and not feel guilty for not reading a textbook. Anytime I would read, I would be like, okay, I should be reading a research paper for my class, or I should be brushing up on something else to study. So it definitely just was a bit like there was a sense of guilt that came with reading during the school year. But as a senior, I realized like the grades I have, they're not changing that much my senior year. Whatever I've worked for, I've worked hard in these years, and I should be able to have a form of self-care and an outlet. Definitely. Also, I made the choice just for mental health reasons. I was really obsessed with personal Instagram, and just Snapchat and like stupid things like that. So once I deleted my personal accounts, and now that my social media use is mostly book-based, seeing books and seeing other people reading, just being surrounded by that does make me more excited. So it's kind of just, as a senior, I think my priorities are a bit different in college than as a freshman. I wanted to make friends. I was somewhere new. Like now I have my routines. I kind of know the lay of the land. I can actually take the time to do things I enjoy, like reading. So I think that's definitely been the biggest shift now.
I agree. Well, first off, Hannah, your priorities are better than mine.
Thank you.
I one thing about opening up no textbooks, didn't care like that. You know, it's not to say that I did bad in college. Let's not put that out there. I did pretty well.
Yep.
For myself.
Don't get it twisted.
Don't get it twisted. I did still do well, but listen, I ain't never felt not guilty about not reading a research paper or not reading a textbook. If I could avoid it by any means necessary, I was doing so. If I could figure out how to get my work done without having to even open them books, then by all means. I ain't got to open this book. I can figure it out. And a lot of times my professors, although we had books, sometimes they didn't use them, you know? And so I look, I didn't stress myself out like that. Yeah, and I did do my fair share of, you know, having to deal with undergrad. I remember being in undergrad and having to go through those pressures and stuff. And I can't believe that it's been almost 10 years since I've been out of undergrad. Yes, I'm aging myself, but that's okay.
No, I didn't know. Wouldn't tell.
I believe it's been almost 10 years that I've been out of undergrad, but I was actually an English major in
awesome.
And so I had a lot of books to be trying to read. And that's the reason why I got burnt out and I stopped reading, because there was so much reading for knowledge instead of reading for pleasure. Yeah. So it took me almost 6 years or more to actually get back to the point where I actually wanted to pick up a book for pleasure. And to be quite honest, I didn't read all them books when I was supposed to be reading them then. Spark notes.
It's hard.
Notes. Cliff notes. If I had the summary, the plot, we was in there. I could make it work, but I ain't had time, because it's like, as an English major, I also was actually a dual major. So I was an English major and a psychology major. So I got and so it was a lot to try to read. And I'm like, no, I have at least 4 other classes. I don't have time trying to read 17 to 18 books. I can't do that. Like, I can't do that. To participate in 1 hour class discussions. No, it's unimaginable. And then on top of that, I don't know about you, but if you're a full-time student worker or a part-time worker, you don't have that kind of time, because then it's like, when do you sleep? When do you relax? And then now you're also talking about how I remember trying to build a social life. And for the most part, my social life in undergrad was popping, because I refused to allow myself to have that. It wasn't until maybe my end of my junior year, senior year, where I kind of like did take the partying and all of that stuff, did take a little bit of a back seat, because I was ready to go. But I do feel you and I understand. So you mentioned that you love photography. So I'm assuming, do you consider yourself a creative? I'm assuming that you do, but I want to make sure, I want to hear from you. Do you consider yourself to be a creative?
Yes, I definitely, all throughout high school, I was an art kid. I took like AP arts and stuff like that. And it just is, I don't know, there's so many different ways to be creative. And again, I think in college, you can only prioritize so much. So like, I think creativity has sometimes taken a back burner, but before I would always draw. I'm super into like tattoo art. I have a bunch of tattoos and I've designed some of them, just stuff like that. So then when I found like reading, it's kind of, I love like a 2-for-1 deal. So if I could figure out how to be creative and with reading, I was like, yeah, why not? And photography is something I didn't really dabble in at all before. I'm rocking like an iPhone 7, so camera quality is not there. So after finding out that I could borrow cameras from my school and just taking pictures of books there, it's just a great way to have other people see like the beauty of books and the beauty of reading beyond what the story is. So definitely I loved it as a creative outlet. Just another way to get like ideas out there. So yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. First off, that's a luxury to be able to even rent a camera or whatever, check out a camera at your school. And I'm assuming you check them out through the library. Is that correct?
Yes. Exactly. Yep. There we go. Libraries, people.
Library. Yes. And I think maybe my undergrad gave us that offer as well, but I never utilized it because I didn't have to, because I wasn't necessarily a communications major or a photography major, but I believe they had that as well. I know that you could check out laptops, which I didn't find that out till later on when I was
literally senior year.
Yeah, that's exactly when I found out. And I was like, well, why did I pay all this money for this laptop when I could have been just them out? But it was a whole thing. But that is a luxury to have. See, libraries are important no matter where they are, academic. And the fact that you were able to check out a camera and be able to use it to now have this amazing Bookstagram, by the way.
Thank you.
I agree with you that Bookstagram is definitely a safe space for me. It is definitely a place where I had my stories with Bree page before, and just like you, I felt like I was in a slump. I was trying to. It was always used as a creative outlet for me. Stories with Bree was always an outlet for me to do things that I wanted to do and to not be judged or whatever by other people.
Yeah.
But I got to a point where I was just like, this is no longer working for me. And I deleted the page. And then I literally reopened the page in January. And I
oh my gosh.
And I was like, thank God, Instagram, nobody got my nobody else got my handle. I was like, thanks that nobody else grabbed my handle. And since then, it has been growing. And part of the reason why I think that it's been growing is, one, it's a community of people that are very nice. They're very kind. There are some spaces out there, but I don't surround myself with that mess. But they're very nice and they're very kind. Everybody has been very open, including yourself, to like be guests on my show or, communicate under their comments and all things. And then book is something that I love and I enjoy, like you were saying. And as a result of that, I have been able to kind of like see that my creative outlet, my creative look on life has been a blessing to others, and I'm doing it in a way that I feel comfortable. I don't feel the pressure like you were saying when you were feeling the pressure from your personal accounts and stuff. I don't feel the pressure to be perfect on there. It's kind of like create content. People are building with me. They're engaging and they're like, oh, this is cool. Or, we're having conversations. And so I agree with you. Is what else was, besides the fact that you created it because that was something that you wanted to use for your self-care, what are other things that you really enjoy about having a Bookstagram that just makes you feel so safe and so comfortable in that space?
Oh man, that would be a hard one to start because it is really a great community. Definitely just being with so many like-minded people, so many people who you can talk about books with. Like sometimes I try to talk to my roommates and it's like a 10-minute summary later and they're kind of checking their watch and trying to move to the next room. Whereas on Bookstagram, everyone is there for the same reason. Like you can talk about books. It's not like review apps like Goodreads or something else where you can't really interact and have that back and forth. So just that sense of community and just talking about books, saying, oh, I like this book, but I didn't like this part. Like it's so specific and you can get like you can have some really meaningful conversations with people. And also just how creative people are in the space, whether they're creating like book tags or the way that they're taking pictures of books is just so inspiring and just like gets me so excited, and it's just so motivating being there. So I love a lot about it, to be honest.
I agree. I 100%, 100%. So for you, are books like your main interest, or would you just say they're more of a form of escape from you, from whatever your reality is that you have going on?
Yeah, that one, man, it definitely has shifted again over the years. Growing up was not super easy. I live in a single parent household. My mom works a lot. She's an overnight nurse. And also just being someone who is biracial in an area that is predominantly white was never the easiest just fitting in. So definitely books were somewhere that I turned to for finding spaces where like I could see people like me and stuff like that. So I would say when I was younger, it was definitely a bit of a form of escapism. But now it is just a form of like self-care, but also like knowledge and just education. There's so many things that, of course, I'm in college, but I learn about like trees and stuff. It's not exactly the same issues. And there's just so much that can be gained from books and so many different perspectives that can be gained that I think now it is more like a betterment instead of like an escapism I view reading as. So
Okay, yeah. And so you bring up a very interesting point. You said that you are biracial, and so I assume that you're black, you're half white.
yes.
And
Yep.
that is a world within itself. So for you, and you're a little bit younger than I am, but for you, living in the world that we live in now, I feel like it was within your. Are you part of Gen Z? Would you consider yourself a Gen Z?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's okay. For Gen Z, I would say that the shift in what literature looks like is when it really starts changing for you all. You all live in a world where you see more diverse books, where you see more diverse authors. That wasn't necessary. I'm right in the generation right above you. That wasn't necessarily my testimony in when I was growing up. But for you, how is it like being able to go into stores, being able to go and pick out stories with people that actually look like you? How does that make you feel? And what is your take on why diverse books are necessary?
It's just so like you feel seen when you see different authors and different titles that have Black girls on the cover, or that have where books where the story isn't centered around someone who is white and then there's like a side character who's like kind of goofy and kind of there. Just the shift in that has been just done me so well. I think also growing up, my mom is Black, so when she was introducing me to Black authors, it was things or like Toni Morrison, like just things that are more serious and more classic Black authors that were great. Like, and If Beale Street Could Talk, that's another one that she really loves. Just things like that, they were great, but I think they can be very heavy, or book like she would introduce me to books that focus more on Black trauma versus whereas now books in the forefront are just stories where the character happens to be Black. And I think that is something that just like Black joy is such a new focus that I really do appreciate in books. Yeah, it's actually at my university, I'm vice president of the Black Student Union. So I led, so definitely there's not many of us. So definitely it's great to have that. But I did last week lead a book club just on different books that people have heard of, which is just something that I don't think would have happened years ago. Just books that have Black authors and have Black characters that are mainstream and popular that you don't have to go to a local bookstore to see, or just stuff like that. So it's definitely been really positive of a shift.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to ask, are you a part of a book club, or do you own a book club? And clearly you have one at your university. Do you have a book club that you are a part of outside of that?
I do not. I would love to be a part of one. I just, as a student, I do worry, like, I don't want to be like a scrub and not get my chapters read if I have a big homework week. But definitely next year and over the summer, I would love to be a part of one, just because discussing books and that conversation is something that I really value and would like.
I would definitely recommend Brown Girls Book Club. You can find
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. I've been in it for the last maybe the last maybe 4 years. I don't know. It's been
wow.
So Brown Girls Book Club. Now I don't participate in each and every one, but they pick a book each month.
Oh, cool.
Maybe about 6 months out the year, and then they move on from there. It's really good. It's a great space. I actually led the conversation for last month in February, and
awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really nice. So I definitely recommend that one. Brown Girls Book Club, amazing. Chef's kiss. Chloe does an amazing job of making sure that we get really great reads each and every month. I think the book for next month is Passing by Nella Larson.
Yes, on my list. Yeah.
It's I haven't read that since college, so it's going to be interesting since undergrad. So it's going to be interesting going back to that book after all of the years and seeing if I still feel the same way that I felt when I read it the first time. And
yeah, that'll be super interesting.
I wasn't feeling it the first time. Let's see if I'm changed, how I feel about that. So throughout our conversation, there have been a lot of things about self-care, about how you are taking care of yourself, which brings us to the book that I told you we wanted to discuss a little bit.
Yes.
Feeding the Soul by Tabitha Brown. And I mean, when I read her book, I read it last year. And I don't remember if I read it at the beginning of the year or in the middle. I think it was close to the end. And either way, it came at a time when I need my soul fed. And first off, I follow Auntie Tab. I call her Auntie Tab. I follow her on social media anyway, on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever she got a page, except for TikTok. I'm not on the TikTok. But
it's a black hole. I don't recommend it.
So I follow her everywhere that I can. And she always has these messages, these life lessons that she says. And I'm like, it's always like the message that she says for the week or whatever comes at a time when I need to hear a specific thing. And I'm like, Tab, you ain't in my house. Who told you? Like, who told you to talk about that? And the title in itself is just amazing and it's eye-catching. So for you, what about this story did you find the most compelling?
Wow. She, like you said, she has just been an inspiration, seeing her everywhere. And she is someone who reminds me of my family members and reminds me of that auntie that you see and is always trying to feed you and is always trying to make sure you're good. So definitely, I think her biggest takeaway for me, or something that, again, I read it at the beginning of the year, so it was also at that perfect transition, trying to be motivated time, and just her talking about chasing your dreams and just saying that even if your path is not linear, you will still end up where you need to be. Woo. That is something I know. She just, while reading, I was like crying, I was eating, I was like so much going on.
Yeah.
But definitely just her message of like, you will get to your destination. It might not be your timeline, or even like you might have bumps along the way. You might get sad. You might have days where you're not feeling your best, but that doesn't mean that is the end point. Like, it still keeps on going. And that was just warmed my heart so much. And it was just, yeah, I agree. She just like pops up at the best times, like you said. So
yeah, she came to my life a couple times, and I agree that this book, when I read it, I really agree that it did put me in an emotional space. It did. I think I did shed a few tears a couple times.
Yeah.
The thoughts and the process and the words that she was saying, it just hit different, especially when you're in a space of transition and you're trying to figure out what it is that you're wanting to do. And for me, Tab's book came at a time when I was really trying to reimagine my purpose and reimagine what it was that I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it at this ripe old age of 31, of really trying to start over in many ways, and trying to rebuild things that I felt like that I had lost during that year. And so it was I was in like a mental health slump, and just listening through her book and being reminded that I am enough, me
Yeah.
as a person, was like, yes, ma'am, I am. So here's the quotes from the book. This thing right here, you are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. Like, man, what? Yes, I am.
Yes.
I am loved, I am heard. Those are some positive affirmations that we literally and say to ourselves every single day. And when you hear that, you are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. How does that make you feel when you just hear those affirmations?
It just, yeah, it makes me feel validated for sure. Just knowing that, okay, if I'm having a bad day, whatever I'm doing in the world is seen, it is heard, like it is worth it, whatever I'm going through right now, because there will be something better to come. And it just, I feel like sometimes it's easy if I'm personally having a bad mental health day to just kind of fall into it and just kind of go inward, whereas those kind of bring me back out. And they're just amazing. And I think they come up like definitely when I'm having a rough time, I do think back to some of her quotes, and it definitely does help get me through.
Yes, I love when I hear her say, very good.
Yes.
My big old grown age, I definitely watch Tab Time. I'm guilty. I should do. Because I thought it wasn't going to be on regular YouTube. So I downloaded YouTube Kids because I was like, I'm going to see this show. I'm going to see this. I don't care who feels what they feel about it. And it was just like, I'm going to watch it because, and I haven't finished watching it, but I think that she does a really good job of teaching life lessons to children in the show. Her book did a really good job of reteaching life lessons as an adult. And to, like you said, that feeling of validation is oftentimes it's like, we do a good job of speaking and talking so negatively to ourselves. And then you have to retrain your brain to think the positive, to be positive, remain in the positive. And it's hard to do when it's when you're trying to silence a lot of the noise, which is part of why I kind of had shut down like my stories with Bree before. And it wasn't necessarily anybody else that was bringing the noise, that the noise was coming from within myself. And I just wasn't feeling inspired. I wasn't feeling motivated. And it was after her book, and then of course some other things that helped me with my self-care, and of course going to therapy. I am an advocate.
We love therapy.
I am an advocate for therapy here.
Me too.
We recommend therapy for Black girls often.
Yes.
I recommend that site often. And she don't even pay me for it. She ain't paying for it. I recommend her site often because it's a good resource, not just for Black women, but Black men can find therapists there too.
Yeah.
Don't get put off by the name if you're a male and you're into this. Please don't get put off by the name. It's just a resource for you to find a counselor. And I'm an advocate for counseling. And so when her book came out and when I read it, I checked it out at the library and I read the audio. So I didn't read the book. I listened to the audio. So she's reading the audio.
Oh, and love.
She included the recording of her mom.
Oh my gosh. I would have cried in public, ugly tears. It would have been happening.
Her mom has some tapes and some recordings that she did, and she recorded the actual recording of her mom. And I was just like, woo, okay, Auntie, why I'm at this bus stop. It's just an ugly cry, but it was such a invigorating and enlightening conversation, and it was so inspirational to hear a parent affirm you and to tell you how life is going to happen for you, because Tabitha Brown is a Christian, and she doesn't deny that. And everybody has their thing about Christianity. I am a Christian as well. You are who you are. I believe in the Lord. But she was talking about that, and her mom was operated in the prophetic, and she was just outlining some things for her. Now, she didn't see those things right then and there when her mom said them, but they did come to pass. And it was just the whole idea of not necessarily, I guess it is considered delayed gratification a little bit, but it was just like to continue to believe, and her telling us her story about how she was in Hollywood. She had to leave Hollywood and then had to come back. That could be discouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Has that ever happened in your life where you literally came to the place that you were dreaming about and you made it there, but then something happened, life happens all the time, where you may have had to come out of that space and you got a little discouraged? How did you motivate yourself to get back to a place where, although this may have happened and although life happened for me, I'm still going to believe and have hope and faith to believe that it's going to get better and I'm going to get to wherever it is that I'm trying to get to? So has that ever been a situation in your life? And if you care to share, please share.
Yeah. So I definitely had a few instances like that. The first being in college when I first began to struggle with some mental health issues, just things that you take some things for granted. So I think definitely just having good days and being less frequent than I would like, things like that. It was sometimes hard to be able, or when I wasn't feeling my best, to stay home or to not see my friends and stuff like that. It can be hard to see or to think of times when they were better. So definitely, my mom always says, like, this too shall pass. So just waiting. Yep. Big, like, mom saying. But just kind of keeping that in mind and knowing that, okay, whatever I'm going through, like, I will be able to get to the point that I want to. And then just in school, my sophomore year was when COVID hit in college. So just knowing that I would be somewhere that was secure and safe, like campus, and then go to a home life that wasn't an ideal situation would just be definitely a setback. But knowing that this too shall pass and knowing that it will definitely come back around, I think just holding on to that hope of what can be just gets you through. And I think Tabitha talks about that a lot, how she always held on to her dream of becoming a star. Like, it will happen when it's meant to happen. Sometimes it might take a little longer, but I think just holding on to, like, your purpose and knowing what you want to accomplish definitely helps get through.
Yeah. I agree. COVID still is hard, whether people want to still here. But COVID, especially when that first year was probably rough for all, because this was new. This was something we had never really necessarily been into a pandemic in this way before. Survived some other things, but we've never been into a pandemic to where people are dying and by droves. You also have to think about your own mortality. You have to consider your family. A lot of us have to go through isolation and the people. What did you do during that time to feed your soul? How were you able to literally make it to this point? Because you have school, you have to, of course, quarantine, all of these different things. So where were some self-care, other than starting back reading and things of that nature? What were some self-care things that you put in place to get through that tough time?
Definitely, I think COVID it definitely formed as kind of a wake-up call, kind of to tell me, okay, people I want to talk to, people who matter to me, I have to reach out to them. Like, I have to make sure that when you are so isolated, when you are so isolated, you kind of reshift your purpose and you need to focus on, okay, who do I want in my life with me during this time? Like, who is going to get me through? How can I support the people I love? So definitely that was a time I was calling, Zooming, texting, just all kinds of things. So I think communication in a support group definitely helped get me through it. Also with Tabitha, at that time, I was kind of rethinking how I nourish myself in eating. So I started to experiment with going plant-based and vegan recipes and stuff like that. So just evaluating how I nourish not only myself, but those around me when we're all struggling. And everyone is kind of in the same boat, which is not the most comforting, but definitely just taking that into account, knowing that, like, I'm not alone in that.
Yeah. So are you a vegan now, or are you just kind of, so you're fully plant-based?
Yeah.
How's it going for you?
It's going well. It definitely, there's times where it's a little bit harder. My mom makes a mean mac and cheese. So just kind of missing her soul food and her gumbo and stuff like that is not my favorite thing. but it definitely has made me feel a lot better. I always had some dairy sensitivity, so it just makes me feel more connected to where my food is coming from, and knowing that no one suffered for my food or like for me to eat. And again, with that, I know that it's a privilege and not everyone can afford to eat vegan. As growing up financially challenged, that definitely was not in the window. It was whatever I could do. So I do understand it's a privilege. I think just it has just been good. I do enjoy it. Definitely have had some more energy and stuff, and just cooking and falling back in love with food and being nourished, and not seeing it as like dieting or anything, just being like, this is what my body needs and this is what will make me feel my best. So
Absolutely. Because listen, growing up in the Black household, for me, I don't know about nobody else, but for me, you eat what I put on this table.
yes.
Because this is what I can.
Yes.
And
lots of Salisbury steak. Lots of Salisbury steak.
And you know, and understanding that that was a moment, that was a time, but we can always do better. I am not a vegan, and I mean, I do eat some vegan dishes, but yeah, I'm not a vegan, but I do respect this discipline that goes into literally you, because you literally have to retrain your body and retrain your system. And so I do appreciate it, and I love Auntie Tabs. I love her recipes.
Yeah.
She has made me curious more than one of them. And I'm like, maybe I can. And at some point I may decide to I do incorporate a lot more plant-based things into my my regimen. I'm just, like I said, not fully there yet. Maybe someday I will be, but for the most part, I change the things that I can change. And I love how she approaches veganism and how she talks about it. Is one of her things that she always says is that take your favorite dish, and if you can figure out how to make your favorite dish vegan, then that's a start. And I love that she doesn't like try to enforce or shove it down people's throats. She just kind of cooks, and she does it with love, and she just gives options, and she tells you how to make stuff affordable. And I appreciate that. I definitely
me too.
That, because there's a space for it. And you mentioned something that was really good about, you know, just basically in many ways you were saying reclaiming your own time. And here's another quote that she said: it's time to give back to you, to discover yourself, maybe even for the first time. And so for you, and you may have had some of these moments this year, but for you, what did that look like? Getting back to your true self, even if it's just finally seeing who you are as a person for the first time. What did that look like for you when you had your moment of enlightenment, as we like to call it sometimes?
Yeah, definitely. I think just realizing it's not so much what I do for, like, yes, I want to care for other people, but it's not so much caring for myself so other people will be comfortable. It's more just putting yourself first. And I think that is something key, whether it's becoming plant-based and eating, because it's not, I've always had some body issues. So just re-looking at myself and realizing that like my body is a vessel for what I'm doing. Like it is getting me through, it's waking me up in the morning, even if I don't want to wake up, stuff like that, just appreciating it. So I think that's been a way just to be myself, but also just listening to my body. If I don't want to do something, if I'm don't want to go out, if I just want to stay in and read, I can do that. It's just not pushing myself to please other people. And I think that's been a big thing of finding out who I am, or doing things for me, not because they make other people happy.
Woo, you said a whole mouthful.
I know, I'm sorry, that got a little deep, but
apologize, you talking. Because listen, and the fact that you're learning that at the age that you are now will carry you for the rest of your life. I remember being in my, listen, I'm still learning, even at 31.
Yeah. Always learning.
Let's not claim that I've gotten somewhere, but I'm still learning, because even last year, I learned that I had to reset some boundaries, because I had been boundaries a little bit, because once again, we were in this pandemic, we're still in it, but those 2 years where you've really felt the pressure. Like for me, I was already dealing with a state of isolation, and then it went from one point of isolation to fully being isolated, because now I have to stay in my house and I can't go anywhere. I can't see people. I can't be around people. And so now I'm really feeling the pressure of having to stay in one sedentary space. And so as a result, when you're in those types of moments, you can sometimes bend your boundaries, not necessarily break them, but bend your boundaries so that you make accommodations for others and people, because you're needing something. You need something to kind of feed you. And so for me, I did some bending of some boundaries, and then I had to kind of like, okay, we gotta get this bump out of here. We gotta straighten it up. We have to redraw some lines. We have to, make sure that we understand that your whole life, although especially I don't know about other cultures, but in the Black community, we're always taught that we should be serving, but sometimes we forget that we should also serve ourselves, because there is a scripture that says, and like I said, to each his own what you believe, but there's a scripture that says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if you're not loving yourself, how can you really fully love your neighbor? And I was in a point where I was getting back to a point where I wasn't really loving myself. And so then I wasn't really any earthly good for anybody else. And so when I listened to Tab's story, when I listened to Feeding the Soul, she was really explaining how you could literally still dream, still hope, and still value and appreciate yourself, but then also still show up in these other relationships. But to take care of yourself as a whole, that is how you really show up well in these other relationships. And so Hannah, when you say that I had to kind of like get back to myself, and understand that I don't have to be a people pleaser. I can literally show up in these spaces, love you, whatever it is that I can do for you, but then still keep something reserved for me. And knowing that if I draw that boundary there, that doesn't mean that I can silence that fear. Then I have to now silence the fear of that you might walk away. And the idea of is, if you do walk away, that must mean that we didn't really have a good, strong connection in the first place. So I feel like you're learning that now. Would you say that that's something that you're learning as you start drawing boundaries and like making space for yourself? Is that what you're learning in your relationships?
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely realizing that if I do say no, like if I don't want to go out or something, my friends are still going to be there. They're not going to be mad at me. But it's not, I feel like in my mind, I make it up to be a very big deal. And I kind of say like, oh, okay, like I'm really tired, but like they asked me to do this, so like I'm going to still do it. Whereas if I say no, they're going to be like, oh, like no worries at all. I think it's just kind of reformatting how you think too. And knowing that like you said, I think what you said was beautiful, just how your friends will still be there. And if they're not there, then that speaks louder, So just that has been super, super helpful. And I'm very grateful for my friends who, some of them knew I'm a bit of a pushover. So I think definitely they were excited to see me be like, no, I don't want to go out and stuff like that. So it's been a really great journey.
That's good, because it's healthy. Like I said, as you learn that now and learning that now, it's healthy. It's healthy because it really does help you understand who you are as a person. And if you continue to, I think their saying goes is, if you continue to allow someone else to show you who you are, then you'll become a person that you don't recognize. It's something along those lines. I might have just made that up. Yeah, but
not me. Yeah.
Become someone you don't recognize, and then you start to feel resentment. You start to feel like angry all the time, and then you go into depression because now you're angry and you're not voicing or expressing your emotions and your feelings about something, because you feel like you're out of you don't have control in that area. And so one of the things that I really loved about the fact that what Feeding the Soul kind of represents, even with the title, even before you even go deep diving into more of the book, the title tells us that it is okay to take care of you. It is okay to know that you're enough, and understanding what you being enough means, meaning that, I love her name is Miss Kev on stage on Instagram and on I don't know if you know that, but she says I am enough without exception, and it's one
Oh,
of
I love that.
and then one of the things that she always says is that main character energy, understand.
Yes, I have heard that.
Yes. So that actually came from her. And of course, a lot of other people started using it. But understanding what main character energy is, meaning that, hey, I take the forefront and the precedent in my life, and then everyone else reaps the benefits of whatever it is that I put in place. And so I agree with that when it comes to friendships and when it comes to friends, and understanding those friends who are lifelong friends, who are
Yeah.
seasonal people, and knowing when to let people go, and understand that
Yes.
you're gonna come in and out your life and you'll be all right and you'll survive it. I think that that's such a wonderful thing, and is that's something that you said that you're learning as well. And I love the fact that your friends acknowledge and accept your boundaries.
Yeah.
That's healthy. Now,
Yes.
if you had some folk that wasn't acknowledging and accepting, I'd be like, Hannah, get them out of here. Get them out of there.
Hey, gotta go.
Go. And so I agree with you. And I think growing up, you, especially if you are raised, not all of us, and this is not everybody's story, but those of us, some of us who have grown up in a one parent household, you are, and not only in a one parent household, but in a one parent household where the parent was mostly gone all the time, it does kind of leave you vulnerable to trying to figure things out on your own. And so would you say that that was kind of why you kind of had those moments where you had to try to like figure it out because you felt like you weren't, I guess not necessarily lacking, but you didn't have as much knowledge in a specific area, and so it took you time to understand, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it was my mom. Like, I'm so grateful for the amount that she worked and that she provided for me. But since she worked nights, she would have to sleep during the day. And I knew she would need to sleep because she has to work so much. So just when we would hang out, I would be so excited to just like interact and spend time with her, that I think that definitely was starting to translate into my relationships, where I'd be like, okay, they want to do this thing, so I'll do it because like this, I don't know, I just want to make sure that they're okay and make sure I can seize the moment. But I think definitely as I got older, and as even seeing what Tabitha said, like some people do come and go, and that's okay. Like you don't have to please everyone that comes into your life. Like there could be friends and people who come in who might serve a purpose at one point, but that doesn't mean they will continue to. And I think just keeping that in mind and knowing that my time and energy is also valuable, and like as well as my friends, I think once you have that at the forefront of your relationships, it kind of puts things into perspectives. And when you do hang out, it makes them so much better and so much richer of an experience too.
Yes, absolutely. Coming from a person who now has to schedule time to spend with friends.
Yep.
With you. So this has been a very enlightening conversation. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you before I get ready to let you go. What was your lasting impression of the book? And then also, do you have any reading goals for the year?
Man. Okay. So my lasting impression definitely was just like we were talking about. And I do love discussing books because I read it a month ago or so. So some of the ideas haven't been as fresh in my mind. But even just getting ready for this talk and re-looking over some of my notes on the book, it just has been the importance of like putting yourself and your goals first, because then everything will follow. Like once that is in line, then everything else will settle into place. So kind of knowing that the actions I do will have a greater purpose, they will amount to some kind of greater outcome, even if I don't know what it is right now, but there is like reasoning behind everything. So that's definitely been a takeaway that I really hold dear to me, especially in a period when I'm finishing school and moving on to a different, or moving in general, I guess, has been super important. So yeah, I love that from Tabitha. And then for reading goals, definitely always read diversely is always one of my reading goals. Just staying with authors, not only Black authors, but Indigenous authors, and also Asian authors and queer authors, and just getting all kinds of perspectives, and just reading more, but reading for pleasure and reading for knowledge, and not so much reading for like a Bookstagram or like a Goodreads quota. Just reading for myself is definitely my goal.
Okay, and thank you, first off. That is very true. Like I try my best to diversify. Now I am an advocate for Black authors. I'm an advocate for Black,
Yes,
but I do try my best to diversify my reading palette. I just finished reading 800 Greats by Laura Dane, and I'm also reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson.
Oh yes.
Sense. And Isabel Caste is heavy, so I had to kind of like add a fiction in there to kind of like get through this book, and I'm slowly but surely getting through it. I only have like maybe 12 days left on my audiobook, so I have to hurry up, but I'm slowly, moving through it. So please tell people where they can find you, and then we'll wrap it up. And thank you, everybody. As always, thank you all for joining us. Let Hannah, please let them know where they can follow you and find you.
Okay, yeah. I just want to say thank you to you too. I'm so grateful for Bookstagram and getting to meet someone just as genuine and passionate about books and what you do as you are. Definitely super inspiring, especially to see a Black librarian. I never had one growing up, so like this is my dream come true, to be able to sit down and talk with one. But yeah, I hope to meet more people through Bookstagram, so you can find me at Get Over Your Shelf at on Instagram, sorry. But yeah, I look forward to meeting more people there and talking about books and different topics too.
Absolutely. Well, as always, you all, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.